This is a gaming PC I built for right around $1,000 before tax, and it can handle pretty much any game thrown at it without issue. Most of the parts inside are brand new, though I did score a couple of good secondhand deals to stretch the budget. I'd say this build is fairly easy to replicate if you're comfortable deal hunting, but if you're not as seasoned of a PC builder and aren't used to like the pricing in the PC market, then it might cost you a little bit more than what I paid for, but still it should come in around 1,000, maybe a little bit over, but not by much. The person I built this for requested specifically for an all-white aesthetic and was willing to pay a little bit extra for it. So if you don't care about that, then the extra money that I budgeted towards the white aesthetics could be put towards other components, and that'll make your part hunting a little bit easier and rely less on finding lucky deals. And I'll talk more about that later on in the video, but first let's take a look at what's inside. We'll start with the graphics card, the most important part to any proper gaming PC, and for this build we've got AMD's newest release of this generation as of this video, the RX 9060 XT. This is the ASRock Steel Legend model with 16 gigs of VRAM. This was chosen specifically because it's one of the few white models available to go with the requested theme of the build. I was able to pick this up on launch day without issue, and I've been tracking the pricing and inventory of these since release, and they've been pretty rarely available close to MSRP. This one came in a bit more at $390, so around 11% more than the $350 MSRP, but I'd consider that pretty reasonable since this is a nicer model with higher clocks from the factory, and of course that white parts tax. I'm pairing the 9060 XT with an Intel Core i5-13600K. I was able to pick this up secondhand for a pretty good price, $130, which makes it a super solid option even considering Intel's recent mishaps. If you aren't able to come across one for a good of a price like this, or if you're just very anti-Intel regardless of how good the deal is, then I'll show another parts list later on that uses an AMD CPU and motherboard instead. That would be a good alternative. Cooling the 13600K is none other than the Thermalright Peerless Assassin 120 SE White RGB. This cooler needs no introduction. It's pretty much the de facto cooler to use when you want the best bang for your buck around $40. If you're trying to save a bit more money, you can spend about $20 for the single tower Assassin X. But the reason I went with the Peerless Assassin though was for the added cooling performance, which means lower temps and the ability to run fans at lower speeds and reduce noise levels. For the motherboard, I went with the ASRock B760M Pro RS Wi-Fi in white. There's no overclocking capabilities on this board, which is fine. The main reason I picked up the 13600K was for the good price, and the higher clock speeds from the K variant versus the non-K variant will still be utilized regardless. This was an Amazon renewed listing, going for $120, which is a pretty good price for an LGA 1700 board, let alone a white one. I've made it very well known on the channel that I'm a huge fan of Amazon renewed motherboards. In my personal experience, boards listed as renewed with the descriptor of very good or better pretty much come pristine without a trace of being used, and it was no different here. I couldn't find any signs of use on this. Had I not known any better, I would have thought this was brand new. Pro tip though, make sure that the listings are marked with free returns in case there are any missing important accessories, damage, or it just ends up being defective. But otherwise, this is a pretty low risk way to save money on a motherboard. For memory, we've got 32GB of G.Skill Ripjaw's M5 RGB in white, rated at 6000 CL36. And I ended up going with the CL36 kit because it was a little bit better pricing compared to the white RGB CL30 kits I could find at the time. And the performance difference is so minor, you'd be hard pressed to know if a CL36 or CL30 kit was in your build unless you were told or specifically looking for it. Storage wise, this build's got a 1TB Team Group G50 Gen 4 NVMe SSD. These days, budget drives are more often than not moving towards QLC NAND, so it's nice to see a budget option like this still use TLC NAND, which has the benefit of higher write endurance. There's no DRAM on this drive, but it does have SLC cache as well as HMB, which leverages system memory to improve performance. For the power supply, we've got the MSI A650BE. I've used the ABN series from MSI in the past, and they've been good value-oriented units that go on sale pretty often for around $60. And this BE model is the semi-modular variant, which is gonna help with decluttering some of the unnecessary cables. 650 watts is plenty for this build. Under full load, the system will pull just a little bit over half of what it's able to output, but while gaming, it comes in well under half load since most games don't fully load up all the cores and threads on the CPU. The cables on this unit are all black, which go well with standard black builds, but I ended up grabbing these extensions from Okanos to match the build theme. White sleeved cables with white connectors and white cable combs. Last but not least, we have the case, which is the Okanos Aqua 3. This is a budget micro ATX case that comes in at $70 and is one of the many options you can choose from in this price range. It is crazy how much competition there is in the budget segment of PC cases. I typically choose them based on my needs at the time, the pricing, and using something I've never done before to have experience building in it. This has tempered glass on both the front and side panels, which is great for showing off the hardware inside. The basement of the case is ventilated, which allows the graphics card to pull in fresh air once it spins up, even without adding any additional intake fans down there. It comes with 3 included adjustable RGB fans placed at the top and rear, and has an included hub to consolidate the connectors to a single header on your motherboard. This was my first time building in this case, and for the price and features, I would definitely recommend it. But a warning to first time or less experienced builders, it does require a bit more patience to build in due to the space constraints. This is a bit smaller than your average micro ATX case. Alright, let's take a look at the build summary and price breakdown. This came in a little under $1,000 before tax, but as I said earlier in the video, I did get a pretty good deal on the CPU, which was a bit of a lucky find, and I used an Amazon renewed motherboard, which may not always be available. But not to worry, I got you with a few minor tweaks. Here's an alternative parts list, which is a lot more beginner friendly with all brand new parts and less aggressive deal hunting, featuring the Ryzen 5 7500F. This comes in a little bit over $1,000, but keep in mind we still got that white aesthetics in there. If you don't care about having a white PC, you can swap out those parts and come in at around the same price that I did with the black version of this build. And I want you to keep in mind, these build lists aren't written in stone. They're meant to show what I did and my thought process to help inspire you for your own builds. But there's a lot of flexibility to them, and I highly encourage you to swap things out and reallocate your budget as needed. I actually built this system live on one of my streams, which is every single Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, unless otherwise posted. Definitely tune in sometime if you're into PCs and gaming. We've got a cool little community that comes together every single week just to hang out and talk tech. So feel free to stop by. Here's a quick time lapse of the build from the stream, followed by some glamour shots and B-roll of the completed system. If you're wondering why the B-roll is all of a sudden showing this build off in hot pink, it's because this build is actually going to a girl in her teenage years, and that was her very specific request. But really, this can be set to any color, and it looks pretty good with the white parts. That's the beauty of RGB. Here it is in red, yellow, and green, light blue. The ice blue I think looks really good. And here it is again in white. Oh my god, that's like blinding. Gotta turn that down for the camera. But alright, enough about the aesthetics. Now let's show off what this thing can really do with some benchmarks. This can play pretty much anything under the sun, from esports to the latest and greatest demanding AAA titles. The 9060 XT actually works really well for both 1080p and 1440p, depending on if you favor more pixels or more frames. And I tested both to show the performance in each. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the benchmarks. The 9060 XT came out at the perfect time. I was finishing up grabbing parts for this build and was actually struggling a lot with trying to find a white card in either the new or the used market. Then boom, this dropped at a good price, good performance. It slotted in perfectly with the rest of the parts that I chose. The $350 to $400 segment was in desperate need for a graphics card that people could buy and feel good about. Nvidia's 8GB 5060 Ti was definitely not the answer. People rightfully expect more than 8GB of VRAM for a card that's almost $400 coming out in 2025. Used AMD cards around this level would pretty much limit you to like an RX 6800 or 7700 XT, but the current prices of those don't make sense as they perform about the same as the 9060 XT raster wise, but are worse with regards to ray tracing and not having FSR 4. So who in their right mind would buy those used with no warranty for the same price? And let's not even talk about Nvidia's used options. The 16GB 4060 Ti performs worse in raster, about the same in ray tracing, and costs more used. Hopefully the secondhand market starts adjusting accordingly. It's in a pretty bad state when buying a new graphics card gets you better value than going used. But we're just gonna have to wait and see, I guess. Alright, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how I did on the build overall, as well as your opinions on the RX 9060 XT. Any of you out there planning on getting this card, or have you already bought it? And if so, are you upgrading from an older card or putting together a fresh brand new build? Let me know down in the comments. Hope you all enjoyed and found this video either helpful or entertaining in one way or another. I want to thank you all as always for watching and for continuing to support the channel. Shout out to the channel members and the super gifters for their above and beyond support. Be safe out there, and I'll see you all down in the comments as well as the next stream and or video. Bye.